So welcome back. My name is Paul. A lot of people know my videos. I've got a large YouTube section and I discuss a lot of very interesting subjects. And I've collected a huge list of playlists of fascinating videos about all kinds of amazing stuff. And a lot of questions come up in discussion as we stretch our brains and try to understand what's going on around us. And I get feedback from time to time from people who have a lot of skepticism about some of the things that I say. And I thought I'd address that a little bit in a series about perceiving what is described in an ancient book called The Hidden, the Subtle, and the Remote. And a lot of people these days, we have a lot of technology and we take it for granted, but I'm old enough to know that it wasn't that long ago that some of the technology that we take for granted now was like magic and science fiction. Nobody could possibly realize that we could have this stuff. And we do. And what that means is that there's a lot of stuff that as human beings, the human race collectively, our science is still learning. And we have some of the same old questions that have been around for a really, really long time. And if I look back in the old teachings from ancient scriptures or books or sages or whatever, and from Tibet and all around the world for a long, long time, you start looking, well, what are these people trying to say? And one of the things that you keep coming across is something that's so much taken for granted, that's so obvious, and it's basically know yourself. Before we ask a lot of questions about what's this and how does this work and how does that work and all those things, a question should come to us when we look in the mirror, so to speak, and say, well, wow, here I am. I mean, there's just amazing things. I mean, I find other animals and so on, but what about me? My existence, my own awareness. Incredible, fascinating stuff. And it reminds me of a story I heard from a sage that's currently living and someone I respect. And he used an analogy. Let's say you're at a party and you don't really know who you are. You have a dream, perhaps. And then you don't know who the guests are, and you don't know what the party's all about. And you're not going to have a good time. But if we know who we are, and we know who the guests are on all the other human beings on the world, and we know what the party's all about, what the celebration is all about, being a human being, then life is going to be a lot more interesting and enjoyable. And it's just a really basic fact. Now, this begs a question because, as I said, these are very, very old questions. And in some of the ancient teachings that we go back to, say the Upanishads or the Bhagavad Gita and many, many others around the world, but there are dialogues and there are stories that say an interaction between someone who's asking all these questions like Arjuna or someone in the Upanishads who's asking these sages or these demigods or whatever. They're saying, well, teach me about these subjects. I really want to know. I want to know about death. I want to know about life. I want to know about my soul. What's it all about? And then, Krishna in particular, he would say, okay, well, sit down a minute. Okay, now that you asked, I'm ready. If you're ready to listen, I'm ready to teach you. It's a little bit more complicated. The fact is that some of the real basic common sense that we forget, we look in the mirror, like I said, you just say, look, every minute, every second of every day of our entire life is going on because of an incredible, amazing process every day. And we might be worried about what's for dinner and what somebody thinks of us and all kinds of stuff we worry about. And meanwhile, every single second is literally a phenomena, but we don't realize that. Now, there's a couple areas that are approachable looking at some of these ancient teachings in regarding to understanding who we are and what life is all about. And those two things, just two very powerful things for now, sound and light. Sound, if you study a little bit about sound, you realize it's just an absolutely amazing phenomena. It's present, it's part of communication, it's a part of structure, it's a part of all kinds of stuff. Very, very fascinating stuff. And light. Light. We only see some of the range of light. I'm a photographer. There's all kinds of different kinds of light. Many we can't see. And there's certain kinds of sensors you can put on cameras, and now they have electronic gadgets that can sense all kinds of interesting ranges of light that our eyes cannot see. Like seeing in the dark with infrared, for example. So, what ancient teaching is saying is, if you want to understand sound, first understand silence. If you understand what silence is, all the other sounds will start to have, you'll start to have an understanding of them. The same way with light. There's all the lights that we see. We close our eyes and there's light. By contemplating the light that is actually part of the fabric, it's a physical thing, it's a part of the fabric, the makeup of our body, our organism, is light. By understanding the absence of light, the inward light, the inner place where the inner universe, all the other kinds of light you start to understand. Now, if you just take like a few things, now you started this with, everybody's got skepticism. People have, I want to know. Okay, well, great. Excellent questions. Now listen, because there are people over thousands and thousands and thousands of years, through the insight, the literal insight of understanding what is inside us, who we are, all the other kinds of understanding start to happen. And when there are some people who think, well, I want to see a magic trick. I want to see somebody pick up a stick and wave it around in the air for a minute, and I want an elephant to come. That's what I want. If he can't do that, then I'm sorry, I'm not listening to any of that shit. It's ridiculous. Because the very arm that waves around the stick is fantastic, the arm is fantastic, the ability to perceive it is all fantastic. Every single one of those things that's going on every second is a lot more interesting than making an elephant appear in your living room. But the understanding, now, reflection is an incredible process. There's a kind of sensor, electronic sensor, that you could make a superconductor, for example, that is so sensitive that even the very slightest amount of magnetic interaction, it will sense it. And that's part of the process. But there are sensitivities in the human being that are absolutely phenomenal, but they don't happen by random, inattentive thinking. To understand ourselves, we have to go to that place, like I said, of the silence, of the darkness, of the deepness, to the point where beams after that point just stream in like, if you can see a maze from above, getting out is no problem. There's no problem. But those types of insights come exactly from that, is looking in. And I'll have to talk about this more in other segments.